The Black Nose Dace is a pattern originated by Catskill angler and fly tyer Art Flick in the mid-1940s. The fly represents small finfish and chubs found in rivers along the east coast. It is distinguished by 3 layers of bucktail forming the wing with a black lateral line. The fly is started by applying your thread to the shank, slightly behind the hook eye. Wrap the thread to the point of the hook in even, smooth turns. It is important to tie in all the body materials so they form a smooth and even body, no lumps or bumps. This will increase the durability of the fly. Notice the hook movement as pressure is applied on the wraps. Also, be sure you use a fair amount to tension when tying down the materials so they do not roll and slide around the hook. Next, you will take a piece of red wool. Cut off a piece that is slightly longer than the hook shank. Start at the point of the hook and tie it down on top of the shank. If it rolls to one side or the other, move it back to the top with your fingers. Make the thread wraps uniform all the way down the shank. Note, the body is even without a taper or lumps. This is essential to form a solid, even foundation for the tinsel body. When you get to a point, about 1 eye length, behind the eye, cut the yarn at an angle to remove the excess in front of the eye. Tie down the end of the yard so you now have only black thread showing on the shank. Take your flat silver tinsel and carefully tie it in under the hook. The end should be behind the eye, again about 1 eye length back from the eye. The longer end of the tinsel should be going to the rear of the fly. Now, wrap your thread to the rear, being sure to keep the tinsel on the bottom of the hook shank. Stop when you reach the barb of the hook. Grab the oval tinsel and tie it in. You should now have the yarn, flat tinsel, and oval tinsel tied in at the same point. Again, keeping the oval tinsel on the bottom of the shank, wrap the thread forward to behind the eye of the hook. As wrap forward, keep the wrap smooth all the way to the eye of the hook. Remove the tip of the tinsel so it is buried under the shank. Continue working the thread forward until you reach 1 eye length behind the hook eye. Your under body is now complete. To make the body, you will take the flat tinsel. Pull the oval tinsel forward and make 1 wrap at the point where the tail is tied down and behind the oval tinsel. Then, winding the thread in close end-to-end wraps, wrap the tinsel forward. Do not overlap the tinsel and do not leave spaces between the wraps. As you work the tinsel forward, keep some pressure on turns so the wraps are snug to the shank. Some tyers will apply head cement on the wraps before winding the tinsel forward to aid in durability. Take a couple of turns of thread to tie off the tinsel and trim the remaining piece. Now grab the oval tinsel and counter-wrap it over the flat tinsel. These wraps should be open wraps, taking about 5 to 6 turns covering the body. When you reach the tie-off point for the flat tinsel, tie off the oval tinsel and trim the excess. The body is now complete. Take the thread and make some wraps to the eye of the hook and back, making a smooth taper. This will help manage the wings when we tie them in. Notice the cone shape now forming the head and the space between the body and eye of the hook. This will form the head and give a platform to place the eyes later. Trim the tail so it is the length of the bend of the hook or 1 gap of the hook over the rear of the fly. This completes the tail. Now we focus on the wing. Starting with our bottom wing, we take the white bucktail and grab some fibers from the tip of the tail. The finer and straighter your hair, the better your results will be. I always grab more hair than I will need because by the time I even the tips and weed out the unruly hair, I can end up with the proper amount. I first remove the underfur from the butt ends of the fly. Grabbing the tips and pulling the ends will get most of it out. You can also use a comb to remove the underfur. Then I grab the tips and pull out the shorter hairs. I match the tips to even them up. I repeat this step until the tips are somewhat uniform and even. When I am happy with the tips, and they are relatively even, I will then use a hair stacker to even them even more. This step is not necessary, but does lead to a better looking wing when it is all put together. Simply put the hair in the stacker, tips down and tap the stacker on a flat surface. Make sure the stacker is wide enough so the hair has room to move around. The bucktail tips are now nice and even. Grab the hair by the butt end and measure the length of the hair by holding it up to the body. It should be roughly twice as long as the hook shank. Holding the bucktail close to the butt ends, cut the hair so they are even and tie the clump onto the top of the hook. Make a couple loose wraps, then pull the thread up. Use a good amount of pressure to lock the hair onto the hook. Note the hair is behind the hook eye and not bleeding into the eye. The hair is on top of the hook shank and does not roll around the sides of the hook. Prepare a small clump of black bucktail in the same manner as you did the white. This clump should be a little sparser than the white. It will be tied on in same manner as the white hair, but slightly behind the white tie-in point. This will help to keep the head tapered and not flat or blunt. Again, keep the wraps tight, making sure the black stays on top of the white and does not bleed into the sides. There should be a clear separation of colors in the wing. Rotate the fly and check that the colors are separated and no hairs from either wing has rolled to the side. You should clearly see the tinsel body and rib. Don't worry about a stray hair or two, you can trim them off later. Complete the wing by preparing and tying in the top bucktail. It should be done in the same manner as the previous two steps. It should be tied on a little further behind the black tie-in point and again using firm pressure to secure it to the hook. One tip you can do to help keep the hair separated is to make a loop around base of the hair first, then walk the hair to the fly and tie it down. Once the top color is secure, build up a tapered head. It should have a cone shape progressing downward to the hook eye. Make sure it is bulky enough to apply or paint on your eyes, but don't over-exaggerate the size of the head. It's a good idea to rotate the fly one last time to check all sides for wing separation. All the hair should be on the top. Whip finish or tie off with a few half hitches to lock the thread in place. Then remove the thread. The tying part is now complete. Take a flat stick-on eye and apply it to one side of the head. Don't worry about adding glue to hold it in place. The adhesive on the eye should be sufficient to keep it in place until you apply the UV resin. Repeat with another eye on the opposite side. Using head cement, or in this case UV bone dry by Solares, carefully apply the head with a coat. Do not disturb the eyes. If they move out of place, move them back. When the head is coated and eyes are set, zap it with the UV light to cure them, or let them dry on a rotator while they dry. The fly is complete. You can trim any wild untamed hairs. A trick is to wet the fly and run a comb through it, then let it dry. This will help straighten the hair and leave you with a nicer looking fly. Notice how all the hair is separated with the lateral line in place. The tinsel body is clearly visible and not covered by any hair.